Hello and welcome to our group project presentation. We are a group of three. Our report topic is high inflation rate in Turkey and solution ways of reducing the high inflation rates. Let's start with the definition of inflation. Inflation is the rate of increase in prices over a given period of time. Inflation is typically a broad measure, such as the overall increase in prices or the increase in the cost of living in a country. And then complex mass systems. Complex systems, often referred to as mass systems, consist of numerous interconnected components, dynamic interactions, and unpredictable behaviors. These systems are characterized by interdependence, feedback loops, and emergent properties that make them challenging to understand and manage. Inflation as a complex system. Inflation arises from the intricate interplay of various economic factors within a complex system. Elements such as a consumer demand, production costs, monetary policies, and global market dynamics interact in multiplicated ways, making inflation challenging to predict and manage. So, let's talk about inflation in Turkey. Inflation in Turkey refers to the persistent increase in the general price level of goods and services, leading to a decline in the purchasing power of money. This phenomenon poses significant challenges to economic stability and societal welfare.
Let's talk about history of inflation in Turkey. 1923 to 1950, early Republican period. From the establishment of the Republic until 1950, Turkey experienced relatively low inflation rates. However, during World War II, 1920, 1939, 1945, inflation rates increased due to the economic impacts of the war. 1950 to 1970, planned economy and inflation. Starting in the 1950s, planned economic policies and infrastructure investments stimulated economic growth. During this period, inflation rates were generally kept under control, though occasional price increases occurred due to the rising demand. 1970 to 2001, high inflation and economic crisis. From the 1970s onwards, Turkey faced chronic high inflation. In the late 1970s and 1980s, inflation rates reached double digits. During the 1994 economic crisis, inflation peaked at the 125%. Factors such as public deficits, currency fluctuations, and structural economic issues were primary contributors to inflation during this era. 2001 to 2017, combating inflation and period of stability. Following the 2001 economic crisis, structural reforms and tight monetary policies led to significant reductions in inflation rates. In 2005, an inflation targeting regime was adopted. An explicit inflation targeting was implemented starting in 2006. This period saw inflation rates drop to single digits, achieving economic stability. And final, 2018 to present, high inflation and economic challenges. Since 2018, Turkey has again encountered high inflation rates. In 2022, inflation reached 85.5%, the highest level in 25 years. Factors such as currency fluctuations, global economic uncertainties, and changes in monetary policies have contributed to rising inflation during this period. As of October 2024, the annual inflation rate was recorded at 48.58%. Turkey's inflation history has been influenced by economic policies and global developments, showing periodic fluctuations. Today, combating inflation remains a priority to ensure economic stability. Now, let's talk about the reasons of high inflation in nowadays Turkey. First, monetary policies and central bank independence. Second, exchange rate volatility. Third, food price increases. 5. Inflation expectations and persistence. 6. Public expenditures and budget deficits. And lastly, global economic developments. Let's talk about our first reason, monetary policies and central bank independence. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's unconventional stance that high interest rates cause inflation has led to reduced independence of the central bank of the Republic of Turkey. This has resulted in unorthodox monetary policies, complicating efforts to control inflation. Our second reason, exchange rate volatility. The depreciation of Turkish lira has increased the cost of imports, thereby fueling inflation. Rising prices of essential imports, such as energy and raw materials, have escalated production costs, which are subsequently passed on to customers. Our third reason, food price increases. Fluctuations in food prices have a direct impact on Turkey's inflation rates, challenging in the agricultural sector, including productivity issues and climate change, have adversely affected food supply, leading to higher prices. Our fourth reason, inflation, expectations, and persistence. Prolonged periods of high inflation have elevated expectations of future price increases among economic agents, entrenching inflationary behaviors in pricing and wage setting process. Our fifth reason, public expenditures and budget deficits. Elevated public spending and growing deficits have expanded the money supply, contributing to higher inflation. Increased expenditures on infrastructure projects and social programs have weakened fiscal discipline. Our last reason, global economic developments. International economic fluctuations have impacted Turkey's trade balance and exchange rates, exerting inflationary pressures. Global increases in energy prices, for instance, have had an inflationary effect on energy importing countries like Turkey.
Effects of inflation to the Turkish people. Impact on income distribution and poverty. Effect on savings and investments. Influence on wages and labor market. Changes in consumption patterns. Psychological and social effects. Impact on income distribution and poverty. Inflation hits low-income households harder as they spend more on essentials like food and housing, where rising prices erode their purchasing power and worsen inequality. This trend deepens economic disparities as their costs rise faster than those of higher income groups. Effect on savings and investments. High inflation diminishes the real value of savings, discouraging individuals from saving and leading to a preference for immediate consumption over long-term investments. This behavior hampers capital accumulation and adversely affects economic growth. Influence on wages and the labor market. Inflation reduces the real wages if pay doesn't match the rising prices, lowering living standards and risking a wage price spiral. Changes in consumption patterns. As prices rise, households may alter their consumption habits, cutting back on non-essential goods and services to afford necessities. This shift can lead to a decline in overall quality of life and negatively impact sectors of the economy reliant on discretionary spending. Psychological and social effects. Persistent inflation creates economic uncertainty, leading to stress and anxiety among the populace. Solutions to reduce the high inflation rate in Turkey. Monetary policy adjustments, fiscal discipline, structural reforms, managing inflation expectations, exchange rate stability, International cooperation. Monetary policy adjustments. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) recommends maintaining a firm and data-driven monetary policy until inflation aligns with targeted levels. Fiscal discipline. The Turkish government has introduced austerity measures to reduce public spending by approximately 100 billion liras. This includes a 10% cut in funds allocated for state institutions' purchases of goods and services and a 15% reduction in investment expenditures. These steps aim to alleviate demand pressures contributing to inflation. Structural reforms. Implementing structural reforms is crucial for enhancing productivity and reducing production costs. The government's medium-term program focuses on curbing inflation, with goals of reducing it to 17.5% in 2025, 9.7% in 2026, and eventually 7% by 2027. Achieving these targets necessitates reforms in various sectors to improve economic efficiency. Managing inflation expectations. Transparent communities from CBRT and the government is vital in shaping public expectations regarding inflation. The CBRT's liraization strategy, which includes targeted loan, liquidity, and diversified reverse management, aims to support the decline in inflation by influencing expectations. Exchange rate stability. Stabilizing the Turkish lira is essential to control import-related price increases. The CBRT's monetary tightening has contributed to a more stable exchange rate, which is crucial for managing inflationary pressures stemming from currency depreciation. International cooperation. Engaging with international financial institutions can provide technical assistance and policy guidance. The IMF's consultations with Turkey offer recommendations on maintaining tight monetary policies and implementing structural reforms to achieve inflation targets. Here, from this causal loop diagram, we can clearly see that solutions reduces inflation rates. Inflation rates affect exchange rates. Inflation rates also affects income distribution and decreases savings and increases food prices, and consumer demand. Interest rate. Interest rate increases the prices, which decreases consumer spending. Consumer spending also increases inflation rate, which, as previously mentioned, increases food prices and production costs and affects wages and monetary policies.